This was the first baseball song I wrote. I had written it as a melody, and I had even a couple of other lyrics written for it, but they were pretty lame. This was 1969. I was living in New York. And I bought the Macmillan Baseball Encyclopedia at the bookstore in the village, and I took it home, and I stumbled on the name, and I wrote the song that night in a kind of a frantic daze. It's not really about baseball. To me, it's about my childhood. I grew up in St. Paul, Minnesota at a time when there was no Major League Ball there. It was what they called Double-A ball. The St. Paul Saints and Minneapolis Millers. And to us kids in St. Paul, Minneapolis, Major League ball players were just names. Names that we saw in the box stores, pictures in the magazines. I'll show you what I mean. Majeski, Johnny Gee, Eddie Juiced, Johnny Pesky, Thornton Lee, Danny Gardella, Van Lingle Mungo, Whitey Karowski, Max Lanier, Eddie Waitkus, and Johnny Vandermeer. Estalella, Van Lingle Mungo, Augie Bergamo, Sigmund Jakugi, Big Johnny Mize, and Barney McCoskey, Hal Trotsky, Augie Garland, and Pinky May, Stan Hack, Frenchie Bordigaray, Phil Cavaretta, George McQuinn, Howard Paulette, and Early Wynn, Art Passarella, Van Lingle Mungo, Augie Bergamo, Sigmund Jakugi, Big Johnny Mize, and Barney McCoskey, Hal Trotsky, John Antonelli, Ferris Fain, Frankie Crossetti, Johnny Sane, Harry Burkeen and Lou Boudreau, Frankie Gustine, and Claude Basso, Eddie Basinski, Ernie Lombardi, Huey Mulcahy, Van Lingle Mungo. I needn't explain that the song really never got very far. But a few people heard it, including Jim Bouton, who at that time had a radio show, I think radio TV, in New Jersey. He was the first guy to air Van Lingle Mungo, and certainly the first person to put graphics to it. He assembled a collection of baseball cards that fit into the song and showed it on the screen. I met Mungo as a result of all this hoopla, and Dick Cavett invited me and Mungo to be on the show, which was at that time being telecast in New York. So I meet Mungo in the green room before the show goes on. Oh, this is Dave Frishberg. Oh, he says, you're the guy with the song. I said, right. He said, and he was very nice. He said, I really like the song. Of course, I'm a big celebrity now. I'm down in Paige land, South Carolina. So he takes me aside and he says, tell me, when do I get the first check on this? And I saw the look in his eye. He was not kidding. He really expected that there was going to be a check. He was a big guy, And he looked like he might be a little unreasonable, you know. I thought fast, though. I said, well, look, I said, nobody's going to make any money off this song. That's number one. Number two, if anyone does make any money off of it, I'm going to be the last one. And I said, you're never going to see a cent off this. He said, it's my name. I said, I know. The only way you can get even on this is you got to go home and write a song called Dave Frishberg. So he laughed, you know, and he hit me on the back. It was hard, but he didn't mean to be, he just couldn't help it, you know, bam. He said, that's okay, yeah, I like it anyway. So I lost contact with him after that. I did send him a birthday card every once in a while.
When I got to the big leagues, the most important man in my life became the Yankee pitching coach, Johnny Sain, who is still alive and well and living in Chicago. And every time I go to Chicago, I get together with John and we talk about the old days. You know, Johnny Sain had these wonderful sayings. You know, the world doesn't want to hear about the labor pains. It only wants to see the baby. And then he would talk about that wonderful time after a ball game when you pitched a real good game, when you didn't have to go out there for another 4 days. He used to call that period of time the cool of the evening. And then, of course, he would encourage players to go in there and fight for, you know, better pay. And he had a saying called, don't be afraid to climb those golden stairs. Then I want to thank my Yankee teammates Mickey, Whitey, Yogi, Elston Howard, Hector Lopez, who gave me my only vote when I ran for player representative of the Yankees. That was the year I got my nickname, the Communist. This happened because we were having a meeting. This was about 1965, and the Players Association wanted to go and ask the owners to please raise the minimum salary. It was only $7,000 at the time, $7,000 a year. We had lifetime contracts. We had no ability to bargain for our talent in a free market. And so the players were taking a poll to see what he should ask the owners. And it was the job of the representative to ask everybody in the room what they thought the minimum salary ought to be. Mickey, what do you think? I think it should be $10,000. Whitey, 12. Tommy, 12. 11, 10, 9, 10, 10, 12. What do you think, Bouton? I said $25,000. Oh, come on. We got to turn this in. $25,000. I said, well, you know, when you think about it, I mean, this is a monopoly business. We're not only the workers, we're the product itself. And that's when the pitching coach Jim Turner stood up and he said, "That's communist thinking." So I was a communist. I'd like to thank Ralph Hout for trading me to the Seattle Pilots. And I'd like to thank the late Joe Schultz for becoming the greatest character author ever had to work with. You know, with Ball 4, people say, boy, you must have made a lot of that stuff up. And I said, no, I didn't. I can't write that well. Who was better than Joe Schultz? The best way to describe Joe was, it was the opposite of Vince Lombardi. Joe felt sorry for us. He told us not to feel bad. We just didn't have the talent. Seattle Pilots were an expansion team. You know, expansion teams are made up of players nobody else wants. And we finished in last place that year. It wasn't that we didn't try to win ball games with the Pilots. We tried every possible way to win. We tried jumping off to an early lead. We tried falling behind, catching up later. Nothing seemed to work, but we always had Joe Schultz in our corner with his wonderful rallying cries, like pound the old Budweiser. Spring training, he had some invaluable advice for the pitchers who were taking bunting practice before the game. Those were the days before the designated hitter, that awful thing. Whoever thought that up ought to be doing jail time. But anyway, so we were taking bunting practice before the game because we had failed to move the runners over in the previous game. Joe was trying to encourage us in our practice, and he said, boys, just remember this. He said, bunting is just like jerking off. Once you learn how, you never forget. I'd like to thank my wonderful Seattle Pilot teammates. I'm now in the process of trying to get the Seattle Mariners to have an Old Timers Day and bring back the old pilots, the one and only pilots. Next year is the 25th anniversary of the Seattle Mariners. And of course, if there were no Seattle pilots, there would be no Mariners, because when Major League Baseball pulled the pilots out of Seattle after their one and only year in 1969, they moved them and they became the Milwaukee Brewers, owned by a group headed up by Bud Selig. Seattle sued Major League Baseball, and they said, if you don't, we're going to sue for millions of dollars. And Major League Baseball settled with the city of Seattle, and in that settlement, they promised to provide them an expansion team in 1977. So, the Mariners say to me, well, what's the anniversary date? Why next year? And I said, well, you missed the 25th, you missed the 20th, 25th, and 30th. We're getting too old for, the next anniversary. Here you've got the Mariners. It's the 25th anniversary. They were born in 1977, but they were conceived in 1969. And even though it was only a one-year stand, it was love. It was still love. And that needs to be recognized. And I have this vision of the pilot players, Gene Brabender and Fred Talbot and Merritt Renew and McNertney and all these guys, Gary Bell and Tommy Davis and Steve Hobley, flying in from all over the country. And they get there and they take the players and they take them to a private dock, and they get on one of these old wooden sailing ships, and then they sail around and they come into the harbor where they're greeted. The pilots. A team without a town, the Flying Dutchman, sailing the seas for 32 years. Sailing the seas, and now here they are, and they're being welcomed home, and they get off the boat, and they climb into these, open convertibles, and they get taken out to the ballpark for Old Timers Day. Wouldn't that be great? Albert was talking about Ball 4 and the controversy and everything. The baseball commissioner at the time, Bowie, the Ayatollah Kuhn, tried to ban the book, which was a wonderful thing for him to do, because now everybody in the country wanted to read the book. Nobody wanted him to read. And then the publisher ended up printing 50,000, 500,000 copies, and now millions of copies. Looking back on it, I realized why the owners and the baseball commissioner were upset with Ball 4. Had nothing to do with locker room stuff, running around the roof of the hotel, beaver shooting. It had to do with the fact that Ball 4 was the first book to tell people how difficult it was to make a living in baseball. Ball 4 became part of the evidence in 1975 at the arbitration hearing, the Andy Messersmith case. The arbitrator accepted Ball 4 because it was based on contemporaneous notes, and that was the hearing at which baseball players were declared free agents. They were then the owners were forced to sit down with the players and negotiate the current system of 6 years of major league service before they were allowed to become free agents. Now, I know a lot of people think that baseball players make too much money these days, but here's the way I look at it. For 100 years, the owners screwed the players. For 25 years, players have screwed the owners. They've got 75 years to go. This is an event about the past where you honor the old guys, and that's great. And but in closing, I'd like to take a look at the future of baseball. A lot of it is based on the past, but this is based on the fact that this is the answer to Bud Selig, who has announced 2 goals for baseball in the new millennium, which is correcting the disparity between high and low revenue teams and labor peace. That's what he says they want, labor peace. And I believe those things will happen, though probably not like the commissioner imagines. Not that it takes a genius to see what's coming. All you have to do is look at current national trends and extrapolate from there. Trend number 1, mergers and acquisitions. Entertainment conglomerates, which own teams and broadcast networks, will soon start buying each other in spiraling combinations of stock transfers, leading eventually to one company owning all the teams. Now, this could happen by design, when some bean counter calculates the projected savings on jockstraps, or quite by accident when it's discovered one morning that a single holding company now accidentally owns everything. Major League Baseball under one company. This makes things simple, especially player compensation. Since it wouldn't matter to the company which teams won, players would have to beg for chances to play to showcase their talents for endorsement, the only real money available to them. Not that the games wouldn't be competitive. For guys making the minimum wage, a $20,000 bonus for hitting 300, say, or winning 20 games, would be worth hustling for. Think of it. Baseball players' share of revenues would drop from 51% to 1%, and our nation would be saved from collapse. And while an owner's ego might want to win, his bank account would have the stats that really matter. Even George Steinbrenner would see that an equal split of 99% of revenues is better than his present share of 49%. It would be like the old days again. Reporters could be happy again, knowing the players were worse off than they were. No more television shows or newspaper columns about greedy ball players squeezing the last dollar from some poor team owner. Of course, it would also mean the end of sports radio, since they'd have nothing to talk about anymore. Having all the teams owned by one company has other advantages too, which brings me to trend number 2, the hostage situation. This is where teams threaten to move to another city if they don't get a new stadium. Baseball owners use the antitrust exemption gained by the federal government to bludgeon local governments into spending taxpayer dollars for their personal benefit. In some cities like San Francisco and Miami, taxpayers have voted against new stadiums. In other cities like New York, they're not allowed to vote. But under a single company, these problems would go away because the owner's leverage would be overwhelming. New millennium taxpayers will be forbidden to even talk about the subject. These restrictions on freedom of speech will be easily enforced by the combined merger of MCI, TCI, CNN, Microsoft, and NATO. But not everything will be rosy for the baseball owners. The game itself will undergo a transformation because of trend number 3, vanishing American players. While today's multicultural game is no doubt better and more exciting, 21st century baseball could be a tougher sell without a single homegrown player. Blame it on computer games, skateboards, whatever. I blame Little League, which taught kids that you needed uniforms and parents in order to play baseball. Remember sandlot ball when we went down to the field, chose up sides, made up our own games? Remember stickball and stoop ball? Gone forever. The disappearance of sandlot baseball, like the disappearance of frogs or the dead canary in the mine shaft, was the warning we all ignored. In the 21st century, you'll only see sandlot baseball in places like San Pedro de Macorís or in a diorama at the Museum of Natural History. Baseball's search for an American-born ball player, like boxing's search for the Great White Hope, will lead inevitably to trend number 4, prisons. That's right. With the growing disparity between rich and poor and the resulting crime, the prison construction boom will continue unabated into the new millennium, with more kids living below the poverty line, younger kids being tried as adults. The prisons will be overflowing with young talent. So many kids, so much time. In fact, prison sports of all kinds will become wildly popular, not just among visitors, but to the television viewers of the highly rated PSN, Prison Sports Network. And PLB, Prison League Baseball, will be especially exciting. One commentator might put it, these guys want to play ball, they'll run through a wall for you. Baseball terms like stealing, hit and run, and leaving the yard will take on a new meaning. The Prison Sports Network, one of the few remaining independents, will even have their own web page, www.con.com. Prison sports will have other benefits as well. A lot of football and basketball players can skip the embarrassing charade of having to go to college. The death penalty will be eliminated for gifted athletes, the 21st century version of a college scholarship, not to mention time off for good performance. Prison sports would eliminate agents, too. Given the choice of signing a contract with Philadelphia or staying in Attica, players will be pretty easy to bargain with. Okay, maybe Philadelphia was a bad example. So what's going to happen is that the prisons of America will become our new sandlots. If we build them, they will come. The playing fields of our future heroes, with taxpayer dollars going to new stadiums at the expense of our public schools, responsible parents will try to get their kids into a good prison. I can see the bumper stickers. My son plays left field for Sing Sing. Once again, American kids will be choosing up sides, playing with taped bats and balls, using rocks for bases, playing for the love of the game. One day some French guy might come here and write, "Whoever wants to know the heart and mind of America had better understand prison baseball." And so I close on that happy note.